Good morning and welcome to the Hibs Observer Thursday morning debrief with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Matty Fairnie to look ahead to Saturday's trip to St Johnstone and Hibs return to action after a week off following the end of the pre-split schedule. As I said, joined by Matty Fairnie this morning, our resident fan columnist, and you'll also know him as the man behind the Long Bangers podcast. Matty, thank you very much for joining us again. How are you this morning?
I'm very good, Liam. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. How are you doing?
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Looking forward to getting the football back. It's always a bit more a quiet period in this line of work when there's no actual football to talk about. So, I mean, as I understand, there's not a great deal of optimism heading into this game, but football is football, so it'll be good to get it back over the weekend. Just before we get started, just a wee word for our sponsors, and I know this is why you are all here anyway. We are thrilled to have Weissman, a global leader in the boiler industry, known for their top-notch German engineering, sponsor our podcast. They've teamed up with Scotland's very own award-winning installation team, MPH Boilers, making this a perfect match right here in Scotland. Weissman's boilers are engineered to deliver not just warmth, but unparalleled efficiency and reliability. We're talking about cutting-edge technology that's designed to save you on your energy bills and reduce emissions as well. With MPH Boilers, you know you're getting the best service from the best in the business, a local team that's committed to excellence and customer satisfaction. As part of this partnership, when you choose a Weissman boiler installed by MPH Boilers, you also get a free internet controller, making it a breeze to manage your heating anytime, anywhere. Plus, they're offering you the first year's service free because it's all about giving you peace of mind and making sure you're looked after. So if your boiler is showing its age or you're just considering an upgrade, this is your chance to get world-class engineering with local expert service. Weissman and MPH Boilers, it's a match made in Scotland. Make sure to check them out and take the first step towards a warmer, more efficient home. So, Matty, let's crack on away to St Johnstone this weekend. So Matty's latest column was on our website yesterday. Do take a look at that if you can. But you were basically kind of saying, you're sort of looking forward. You were sort of looking forward to having football back, but you do feel there is a certain amount of apathy and the support around not just this game, but the final weeks of the season, which I mean I can completely understand.
Yeah, I think from reading the forums and for messages we get on Twitter, I think there's quite a few people have just kind of went, well, that's the season done. I know a few folk personally that have just sort of written the rest of the season off. They're not going back. But I suppose the flip side of that is I know there's like a good few of us are going on Saturday and are sort of determined to go all to the rest of the remaining games. So I suppose it probably has been the case with the Hibs support this season. There's quite a split in it with folk who've written off and folk who just go regardless. But I'm one of the people who are, I don't know, like a bit masochistic and just look forward to watching Hibs.
A glutton for punishment, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's McDiarmid Park. Probably the site of one of the most disappointing league days of the season, and then obviously St Johnstone came to Easter Road, and that result was the end of the top six hopes. Really, I think that felt like, if not mathematically and officially, it's sort of. I remember coming away from Easter Road that day and thinking, I think that's it. To be honest, it was a poor game to lose, but it just seems like the way that Craig Levein sets this team up, it seems as if Hibs have particularly struggled. I mean, they came to Easter Road, it wasn't pretty. I remember the game at McDiarmid Park was a real slog as well. Suppose it'd be daft to expect anything different in terms of how the game might pan out, but it's certainly a side that Hibs haven't been able to find the answers against this season, and it's in the current context of this anger after the Motherwell game, this apathy you're talking about, the kind of need for, as mentioned quite bluntly in the statement, for Nick Montgomery to quickly improve results. It's not really the ideal place to start, is it?
No, it's not. It's probably the tie I would have preferred to have had at Easter Road. Like, if we could have opened the bottom six fixtures, I think ideally we'd have had Livingston at Easter Road, but St Johnstone at Easter Road would probably be my next pick. But going to McDiarmid Park, I think what I'd like to see is Hibs play sort of like without their wings being clipped a bit. We don't really have that much pressure on us. I think we still maybe need a result or two to make sure we're. I mean, it's a long shot that we're going to get pulled into anything that we don't want to get pulled into at the right at the foot of the table. But I think we should be able to approach these games with a bit of pressure off. We know where we're finishing in the league, that we're in the bottom half of the table. We don't want to be there. So they really need to use these next 5 games to show what they're all about. They really should have done that up till now as well, to be fair. But that opportunity is gone. So I think with the pressure lifted a wee bit, and definitely I think, particularly with the Levine factor, this is a game that Hibs should have a bit of determination to go and put a few wrongs right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of alluded to it in your column as well. Probably, you think perhaps 3 points here would just about quell that sort of lingering. I mean, it is a long shot that Hibs could be dragged into that, but I think it is natural as a football fan to have that lingering fear of until something's mathematically impossible, then it's not going to stop kind of gnawing away at the back of your head, especially with the way things have gone this season, because it has felt a lot of the time like whatever can go wrong has gone wrong at times, and it's been I think the phrase I've used a couple of times has been a sort of perfect storm of factors, some of them very much within Hibs' control, that have kind of led to the current position. Just in terms of the game itself, you're saying you kind of like to, see Hibs kind of play with the shackles off a wee bit. Do you kind of expect Nick Montgomery to make, the fact that, there is kind of pressure on him, obviously, but do you think could you see him making any sort of significant changes to the way he sets up the team, who he plays? Because it's, he has been told that something needs to change. So do you kind of expect him just to keep ploughing away and trying to build what he has been, or do you think there's any chance in these last games that you could see him trying something a bit different?
I don't really know what options he's got to shift things around. Like there's a couple of changes it could be. Like if you look back to Fir Park just before the split, we started without like a recognised centre forward, so you'd maybe bring Venti back in to play that role, where you've got Lafondre, I think, is available as well. I think it's a difficult one for Montgomery, because I don't think he's really got the youth players that you would want to see coming through. I don't know if they're quite ready yet from what we've seen so far this season. And normally, like that, your end of season games is a good opportunity to play them. There's obviously a wee bit of clamour to get Lewis Stevenson up to his 600th appearance, which I think needs to happen. Come hell or high water. That should be a sort of mandatory objective for Montgomery for the rest of the season, even if it's like 5 minutes at the end of the next 3 games, whatever. I don't know in terms of like system formation. I don't really know what he can change. I can't imagine that he's going to rip up everything that he's done so far. I think that's a frustrating thing, because it hasn't worked. You can see he's obviously set up to have this possession-based game to try and draw opponents out, but we've also seen with St Johnstone is they're not bothered about coming out. They'll just let you have the ball, and it becomes an absolute slog. And he needs to learn from that. I think like if that approach doesn't work, it's not pretty to watch, and it's not getting you results, then it's probably not the right idea to stick with it. So I'd like to think he changes something, but what that change is probably, for smarter men than me.
I know, well, that is the conundrum, isn't it? I suppose there is perhaps a need for something to change, but then not having an awful lot of options to actually change it. That is one for the real football men to fathom out, and we'll see obviously what happens there. Just in terms, maybe just looking at the sort of broader context going into these last 5 games, you just bringing it back to that sort of unwelcome apathy, as you said. Is there anything, aside from going out and winning 5 games 5-0, is that anything too much that Hibs can do over these next 5 games to really significantly turn that around? Or for you, or what's the feeling you're kind of getting among the sort of broader fan base? Is it all just building for next season now? Is there a chance that we could be sitting here after the last game of the season and actually thinking, well, this has been a lot better? The kind of opinions are shifting a wee bit, or has it gone down? Has not been able to finish in the top 6, missing out on that chance to push for Europe, these kind of almost meaningless games, does that just make it all about next season, or is there still things Hibs can do over these next 5 games to get people back on side a bit?
I think it's probably too far gone for this season. I think you're not going to get, unless it's an absolute hammering, he's not going to get, or Hibs are not going to get any credit for the wins, because these are games that we think we should be winning anyway. So the defeats will probably feel worse if there are any. The draws will be sort of shrugged off. And I think the wins will probably be shrugged off as well, unless they're spectacular. I think if I was Hibs throughout the club, so the messaging from the top down, it would be entirely gearing every bit of communication out towards next season and talking about building, pointing to things that we're doing. So if I use Hearts as an example, they've got 3 or 4 signings in, I think, already for next season. Maybe exaggerate, maybe 2 or 3. I think if I was Hibs, I would be trying to get things like that happening, just to give people a wee bit of hope for the new season that things will be different. I don't think there's much that they can do results wise for it. I think just where we are, and people are kind of have come to terms with it now, and it would only be if there was like a really, really bad result that folk would get, the burning pitchforks out again. So I just write that. It's almost like you say, write this season off, but just focus everything on next season. Give us something to cling on to. Make sure that we can see the progress. This review that they talked about, communicate what's happening with that. It doesn't have to be. I think wait till the review's finished before you communicate anything. They can sort of drip feed wee bits to keep people going. That's what I would do if I was at Hibs anyway, just to try and change the mood a wee bit.
Yeah. Well, kind of on that note, there was a report in the Edinburgh Evening News earlier this week about Hibs exploring the kind of potential to appoint a technical director. So there could be a wee bit of movement there. And you touched on in your column, I thought it was a really interesting point about just the need for a role for somebody who knows how to get the most out of this multi-club model for Hibs. Is there kind of specific aspects of that? I think you mentioned, kind of like stuff like scouting, analysis, recruitment. Would that kind of be a broad role? Just somebody with that expertise of how these models work and how it can work for Hibs?
I think so. If I was looking again, if it's my business and I'm looking at where Hibs are at, and you're part of this multi-club model, and you have like at the top end of it, you've got Bournemouth with vast resources, a great setup. They're building the training centre and all the stuff that comes with that, a new stadium. You've got Lorient who are not doing too great in France, and then you've got an emerging club in Auckland. I think there's also talk about buying Standard Liège as well. So you've got different skill sets, different strengths across the group, and really you would want to have somebody that understands what those strengths are, where your own gaps are. So at Hibs, what are we not good at, and where can we leverage the group to bring that in? So we saw in January we had Marcondes and Mariah Welsh come in, also Bevan, who obviously went back to Bournemouth. So the 3 players, so you can see that they're taking advantage of the relationship. But how do we make sure we've got the right players coming in? So you need somebody that's got an understanding of the group, because Bournemouth will want to get something out of it, or Lorient will want to get something out of it. So you need somebody that has that wider awareness of everything that's available, and how do you pull it all together to the betterment of Hibs? And that has to be their focus. It's not necessarily what benefits the whole group. That should be part of it. But how do Hibs eke every little bit of benefit from that relationship that they can?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it'll be a sort of transitional period in terms of that as well. If there's going to be stuff to come from this review changes, then as we're kind of anticipating, then it does come with a sort of a level of transition. I do think it makes absolute sense to have somebody in with the sort of prior experience, knowledge, expertise, however you want to spin it, of how it all works, really. So it seems it's something that would make complete sense. Just in terms of the review itself, I think you perhaps touched on this in your column, or it was maybe your one column last week. My apologies. I just put kind of what do you want to see come from this? What is the kind of overarching hope for you? Is it just a sort of maybe a catalyst for the beginning of this beginning of the end of this sort of cycle of burning through managers, kind of mishmash of recruitment? What's if it's yourself, just kind of one thing? What is it that you want to see come from this?
I think it's having that coherent strategy through the football side of things. Right? Obviously, we're not successful on the pitch at the moment, so you need to do something that makes us successful where it counts. And it's great that you've got commercial activity that will drive money in. That's one part of it, but you need to win on a Saturday afternoon or a Wednesday night whenever you're playing. So I think from the review, I think Hibs just to look at every aspect of it and say, what do we do today that adds value, and what do we do today that is a waste of time? We will expend time, energy, and money on various activities and get limited reward from some, and we'll get loads of reward from some, or we'll get no reward from some. So you need somebody to come in. And I'd actually hoped this was what was going to happen last year when Brian McDiarmid came in. With the director of football. How I understood, and perhaps I'm just naive or completely wrong, but how I understood a director of football role would be to kind of tie up all the things that line into the first team and say, right, does everything that we do benefit these guys on a Saturday? But I don't think, from what I gather, that that's what Brian's role turned out to be. And fair enough. That's for him and the club to decide. But I think that's the oversight that they need. So you have things like, do we have the best coach development that we can have? So we'll have good coaches in the building today. Are they staying at that level, or are we improving them as coaches? That we'll have data analysts, and have we got the best data analysts that we can get? Some rules like Hibs rely on interns and things like that. And is that the approach that we want to take, or is there a level up we can do? Do we have the best software? Do we have the best equipment? Do we have the best facilities? Obviously, they're building the indoor training pitch. What else do we need there to kind of benefit the team? Do we have the best manager? That has to come in. And do we have the best people appointing managers? That needs to come into the review as well. It's that whole, what's the phrase, like a root and branch review that they need to do. And I think it needs to touch every aspect of the club that influences the performance of the first team. Everything. And nothing should be out of scope for it, and nobody should feel threatened by it. It should be like totally objective, just to say, right, is this adding value? And if it doesn't add value, cut it out, spend your time on something that does add value, or improve what you do to the point where it does. It's that sort of review. That's what we need, somebody to come in and just sort that part of it out, and just, you sound like a corporate, BS type of language, but this is effectively what it is, this sort of like streamlining, which I hate myself for using a word like that, but it is that, but be properly ruthless, properly objective with it, be totally open to new ideas, don't be precious about what we do today, in terms of, because one of the biggest barriers of focusing on, but we've always done it like that. It doesn't matter what we do today, doesn't work. We've had 2 bottom 6 finishes in 3 years, nearly 3 in 3 years. If we look at last season going to the wire, so what we do today doesn't work. We need to be revolutionary and do something spectacular to improve it. So I think everything should be on the table. Everything should be up for review, and Hibs need to embrace it. Like the people at the top need to embrace whatever the review recommends. They need to go, right, well, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, so then I guess the hope would then obviously be that that's where the influence of Black Knight FC comes in, who have implemented this model. They've come in at Bournemouth, who now very much seem to be a club on the up. So is the kind of hope then that influence, I know it seems like an obvious thing to say, but just then it can be exerted over Hibs and replicated to whatever extent possible?
Yeah, I think so. There should be a blueprint. Now, I think the obvious sort of challenge to this is look at Lorient, because Lorient are having a struggle, and Black Knight have been in there a wee bit longer. But for the life of me, I have Googled to try and find out what's going on there, to see to what extent Black Knight have been able to go and change things. And I know they've sent players from Bournemouth and taken players from Lorient to Bournemouth, but over and above that, I don't know whether they've had that same influence over Lawrence. So I don't know how fair the comparison is, but I think when you've got the Vegas Knights as the hockey team, isn't it? The Golden
Yeah,
Knights? Vegas,
Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah,
Vegas Golden Knights, yeah, right. I'll get to that. I'm not a big hockey fan.
no, neither.
But they went in there and they have like a very sort of clear model. Now, it's if you look at who's behind Black Knight, there's this other loads of investors, huge wealth, huge expertise in sport and building successful teams. And they've taken that model. They've won, is it the Stanley Cup? Is that what they win in the hockey? Something like that, right? Let's go with that. I'll say that. That might be golf.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't watch either. They won something. So the model works. It's working with Bournemouth at the moment. I think it's about having the infrastructure right and then the right people and having a good team all focused on the right thing. Like, to strip it back to bare bones, replicate it, and there's a good chance that model will work. There's bound to be some nuances in Scottish football that that you need to adapt to. But adapt it, put a model in, see what works and what bits you need to change, and then take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just, for me, it's maybe just helping kind of implement a sort of strategy that's sort of sustainable and a bit more maybe kind of straightforward. Like, I think, it seems to be, kind of talking about, I've heard, mentioned this kind of level of change and overhaul every 2 to 3 seasons. But I just think, I think especially in Scottish football, I think it's significant change sometimes is kind of unavoidable by where sort of clubs like Hibs and other Scottish clubs sort of sit in the sort of food chain almost of football, because if you bring through a good player, several good players, they're going to end up moving on. They'll be snapped up by kind of richer clubs in bigger leagues. That's the kind of way of the world. The same thing sort of applies for managers as well. It's if Nick Montgomery had come in and say won a cup or taken Hibs to maybe running close third or something, then you'd probably be talking about the potential for him leaving, but in a completely different way. But I suppose the whole point of with Hibs, I'm just kind of surmising with Black Knight FC, what kind of want to do is get to a point where sort of significant changes and maybe losing important people doesn't completely disrupt the overall sort of model. That for me is kind of my sort of understanding of, if you're going down the route of having a sporting director, technical director, that managers can leave, players can leave, but there's an overarching kind of strategy of how you want to play, the kind of players you want to sign, the managers that you want to bring in to implement that style of play is all sort of continuous. So it's to acknowledging that there is always going to be change at this sort of level. But again, it's that word you used as well, but I can't think of a better one. It's sort of streamlining in another sense, that it's not massively disruptive. You kind of know the kind of coaches you would want to bring in, and that applies at all levels as well. I think you kind of see a lot of clubs nowadays, kind of talking about the youth teams will be set up to play in a similar way to the first team, so that's kind of streamlined all the way through. So it's, again, the hope is that, as you've said, having Black Knight FC involved in that and the kind of changes they've made at Bournemouth, I think you're right. It is a bit more kind of harder to fathom out exactly what's been done at Lorient. It's not been kind of as well publicised. Obviously, Bournemouth, that's the sort of the marquee, the head of the chain for them, really. So with Lorient, it's not quite as it's been as clear cut, and then, as you said, I think it's understandable to maybe have a wee bit of trepidation because it's not gone quite as well there. But I don't know, maybe Lorient's something we could look into and try and find out what's been going on there. Matty, I think we'll leave it there for today. I think thanks very much for joining us. It's much appreciated. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. Just as for over the next couple of days, it's press conference day at HTC tomorrow. So if you stay tuned to our website tomorrow afternoon, we should have an update on the squad fitness from various players. That all comes from the manager, obviously. And then later on in the day, we'll have a full interview with the manager himself and one of the players. So do keep an eye on our website for that. As I've been constantly banging on about, and you're probably thoroughly sick of it by now, but if I could just direct you to the ticker at the bottom of the screen. We are running an offer at the moment, £1 for 6 months, full access to the Hibs Observer. That's all our content. That's these videos, tactical analysis, exclusive interviews, pre and post match content, everything you can imagine as it pertains to Hibs. And as well, if you're watching on YouTube, we do really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, because it helps grow the channel and helps us obviously keep doing what we are doing in terms of these videos. So yeah, I'll park it there for today. Matty, thank you very much for joining us as
Thank you.
always. And we'll see you again next time, folks. Thanks very much.